So today I want us to build together a setup very much inspired by the new Moog Labyrinth synthesizer. I went ahead and built also an interface for it. You can see we have a patch bay, inputs, outputs, we have the two sequencers, the oscillators, the mixer, right, the wave folder, the filter, the crossfading and everything else. But let's really start building the synth itself. Let's start with the oscillator section, so we have something to listen to when we build the sequencers. On the original synth, we have a sine wave VCO. It has also through zero linear FM. And we have also a triangle wave, which is more of an LFO actually. So in VCOs, we will use the wavetable VCO. By default, it's set to a sine wave. Right, it has also through zero linear FM. If you click this once here, you see through zero linear, which is exactly what we need. And we will use once also the VCV LFO. Right, by default it's an LFO, but it can also go much higher in frequencies. You can see it can go quite low, but it can go up to about 1000 Hertz, which is more than enough. Right, now again on the synthesizer, we can mix the oscillators VCO and the mod VCO, which is the triangle. We have also noise with tone control or color control, right? We can make it darker or brighter. And we have also a ring mode level, so the mod VCO or VCO2 will ring modulate VCO1. And we can add this as another layer on the mixer itself. So again, in VCOs, we will use the mixer from Surge XT. We will use once the sine wave, once the triangle wave. Right, in this case, we have noise already built in with color or tone control. And we even have here built-in ring modulation, right? So we can ring modulate 1 and 2, which is again exactly what we need. We have everything on the mixer itself. Now the mixer on the original synth will also saturate or clip the audio at a certain level. So for this, what we can do, we can use the Moog Audio clipper module, right? Send the mixer through this. And let me show you this also on the scope. So now if I bring in the sine wave, let me zoom in here a bit. Right, you can see we have a sine wave, sine wave, sine wave, and when we bring the level even higher, you can see it starts to saturate a bit. We can make this even to happen even quicker. If we take the threshold down a bit, let me take the sine wave, let's say about -2. Right now when I bring the sine wave up, we have sine, 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 and then at some point you can see it starts to saturate and get more harmonics, which is also quite fun to experiment with. Now, of course, on the synthesizer, we have also a wave folder with bias control. Now, I tested quite a few wave folders in VCOs, and I chose to go with the shaper from Squinky Labs. Right, it has oversampling, which is also great for reducing aliasing. And it sounds also pretty nice. So we need to change the mode. We have two fold modes, and I actually like the second one better for this one. Right, and again, on the original synthesizer, this will go also through a VCA. The wave folder will go through a VCA. There's a dedicated decay envelope that will control it. And there's another decay envelope that we will use, or we can use to control. You can see EG1 to control all sorts of different things on the synth. So again, in VCV, we will use the VCV VCA after the wave folder, right? And for our envelope or envelopes, we will use Rampage. It has two decay envelopes that we can use. And let's for a second just listen to this without the envelope, just so it's droning. Right, the mixer, let's get rid of the scope here. The mixer will go to the wave folder. Right, let's bring in the sine. Right, so we can fold it. Oh yeah, and we can clip it also, right? This is no. Right, we have sine, 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 then a clipper. Right, we can add also the LFO, but also at audio rates. or we can add this as a ring modulation. Right, with ring modulation is basically amplitude modulation, so we can have also something like this. Right, and again, have lots of fun with this. So now before we continue with the sound, with the filter and everything, let's work on the sequencers. So again, on the synthesizer, we have two sequencers that will work quite similarly to how the Turing machine works. You can let it generate rhythms and modulation, but also lock the sequences and get something more repetitive. There are also built-in scales to quantize the sequences if you want to use this for pitch. We have the corrupt feature, 2 knobs, one for each sequence. Right, this will allow us to add more or less randomness. We can shift the steps, we can change the length of the sequence, we can even save a sequence to memory. So again, in VCVREC, we will use 2 Morpheus sequencers from Orange Line, right? One for each voice, or one as a sequence by its own. We will use also a quantizer. And I will use here the one from Secotcell, right? We have 2 CV outputs. They will go to the quantizer. On the quantizer, we can attenuate this or control the range, which is also available. Right, we have this also, the CV1, CV2 range on the synthesizer. Right, and this we can do directly from the quantizer. We have also built-in scales. To the right, we have major scales. To the left, we have minor scales. Right, and again, all of this will be available later on the interface. So one sequence 1 will go by default to the VCO, to the wavetable VCO, to the sine wave, and another one to the triangle wave. Now you can see here on the LFO there is no volt per octave input, but the FM input by default will work exactly like volt per octave when you open the attenuverter all the way to the right. So basically this is now volt per octave. Now these sequencers will also generate rhythms, so we can set these rhythms to sort of sync the pitch to the rhythm, and there will be no change in pitch unless the rhythms also play. So I will use sequence 1 for this. This is also how it's routed on the sequencer. And this will trigger both sections here on the quantizer. And again, this will make sure that there will be a change in pitch only together with the triggers. And for now, let's use just the first sequencer to also trigger the envelope on Rampage. And we will use here the signal input, so input A in this case, and you will see soon enough also why, right? So the sequencer, the gate output, will go also and will trigger Rampage. Right, we set the range here to fast, so we have a nice decay envelope, and this will control the VCA of the wave folder for now. Now we can use another LFO as our clock source to clock both sequencers, right? So now they are also running, and let's listen to this, right? So let's take the sine wave and bring in the decay here or the fall. Maybe make this a bit quicker. Right, so we have a sequence, a random sequence, but again, we can lock it. Maybe change the length, let's go with 7. Right, I can also change the octaves here on the quantizer if I want something lower. Right, so now we have a locked sequence. Again, we can open it and lock a different sequence, or just open it a bit and let it evolve in a generative way. Right, and again, like this, we can generate and change the different sequences. Now again, on the original synthesizer, we have here a crossfader, the envelope generator trigger mix that will crossfade between the triggers of the sequencers and will dictate which one will trigger the envelope, and actually it will also dictate the velocity of each sequence, right? So all the way to the left, we will have full velocity on sequence 1. All the way to the right, we will get only sequence 2 at full velocity. and we can get also a mix of both everywhere in between. And according to this, also the sequences will have different velocity. So in VCVREC, we will use again, let me put this here, the fade module, the VCV fade module, right? And then we will use once, let me disconnect everything here. We will use once the first sequence and once the gates or the triggers from the second sequence. The output will trigger again the quantizers and also rampage. And again, through the signal input, not the trigger input, the signal input. Right, and this is again why we are using this, because now we have also velocity. You will see this in a second, right? Let me bring this in. Right, all the way to the left, we have sequence 1. All the way to the right, we have sequence 2. Right, and again, we can lock it maybe with a shorter sequence. Let's go with 5. Right, so again, to the left, 7-step sequence, to the right, a 5-step sequence, right? And again, now we can have a mix of both, and this will control also velocity because we are using the signal input, right? So the strength of the triggers will dictate the strength of the envelope, which will change also the velocity. So now if I bring in a bit of sequence 1, you will hear that it's with a lower velocity, right? You can have more and more of sequence 1, or just sequence 1 and then add a bit of sequence 2. Right, again with lower velocity. Right, so now we have also this crossfader, this mix between the triggers. Now let's work on the filter and also on the routing a bit. So again, on the original synthesizer, we have a filter that can crossfade between low pass and band pass. And we have also 3 routing options, so we can have the mix going to both the folder and the filter in parallel, or to the folder and then to the filter, or to the filter and then to the folder. And there is also a blend control that you can choose what to listen to. You can listen just to the wave folder, just to the filter, or again to both. So in VCVREC, for our filter, we will use tangents from Volt, right? It has low pass and band pass. And we will use again another fade module, and this will crossfade between the inputs, between the low pass and the band pass. So we can send the signal, crossfade the signal between the low pass and the band pass, and by that get the 2 different flavors, right, of filters. And of course, also the filter has a dedicated VCA, right, with the same envelope from Rampage in this case. And now let's set the routing. For this, I will need some space here. Let's take everything here a bit to the right. Right, for this we will use the Intermix Matrix Mixer from Stürmelder. Of course, all of the modules are available for free. This mixer allows us to save scenes, right, and switch between them. And again, everything will be set up later also on the interface. You will see this soon enough. Right, so we have like this. The mixer will go to the first input here, and then the folder after the VCA will go to input 2, and the filter after the VCA will go to input 3. Right, now we can send the mix. Right, we get output 1 to the folder, output 2 to the crossfader here on the filter, and we can send the mix, right? This is input 1. Let me show you this. Input 1, right, will go to the folder and to the filter if I turn these 2 on, right? So this will be to the parallel option, to the parallel routing. Again, it will go in parallel once to the wave folder and once to the filter. And again, we need a way to blend between them. So we will use again the fade module, connect 2 outputs to it, right? And then once will be the folder and once will be the filter. So again, the folder, opalach, will go to one output and then the filter will go to another output, and we get both of them in parallel. All the way to the left will be the wave folder, all the way to the right will be the filter, and again we can blend between them, right? So this is the first scene. Then the second one, again we can switch between them, right? In this one we have the folder going into the filter, so the mix will go to the wave folder, right? And then the wave folder will go back and will go to the filter, right? This is the filter here. Then we need another crossfade module, another fade. Again, use two outputs. And then the folder goes to the filter, and we need two more outputs here. So we need the folder and the filter going again to two outputs. And again, we can crossfade between them. So if you want just the folder, or if we want the folder through the filter, right? So this is another scene. Then we have the last one. In this case, we have the filter first. So the mix will go to the filter, and then the filter goes back and goes to the wave folder. Again, we need another fade and two more outputs. And then again, we have the folder and the filter. So we have now the three scenes, or the three routing options, right? All we need to do is to mix the fade modules here. I will use the VCA mixer. We have 1, 2, and 3, and this will go to the output. Right, and now let's test this really. So again, I will use a sine wave, right? Maybe a longer decay, and maybe just sequence 1, right? Again, everything will be on the interface. You will not need to deal with any of this. But now let's go to the parallel, right? So now we have the parallel option. We have all the way to the left, just the wave folder, all the way to the right, just the filter, right? Maybe I will saturate this also a bit. Right, and again, we can crossfade between low pass and band pass. Let's go with low pass for now. Right, so this is in parallel. Then we have the second one, which is the folder through the filter. So if I go with the crossfader all the way to the right, this is now just the filter. And I can filter the wave folder. Right, or we have the third one, which is the filter to the wave folder. So again, if I take the fade all the way to the left, this is now just the folder. Right, you can add the ring modulation here. Right, so the filter goes to the folder in this case, and we have the three routing options. And you can see this is quite a relatively simple patch. There is nothing really too complicated going on. Just the routing maybe is a bit complicated. But let me show you now how everything is working on the interface. So again, this is how the interface looks like, and the patch is more or less the same. You can see it's, again, quite a small patch. I just arranged this a bit so it's a bit easier to see what's going on. And I added also the patch bay module, so I will show you this in a second. And also a few mixers just to mix pitch and modulation and so on, just to make sure everything is working correctly. But all in all, we have the same patch. It's again not so complicated. It's quite simple, or relatively simple. And this is the interface. So we have the patch bay. I'm using the new patch bay modules from Vimeo, which are absolutely brilliant because you can see there are no cables going anywhere. On the left, we have inputs. I put them on the left. So again, if you want to connect things, they are not, the cables are not going on the interface. And there are some inputs here that will automatically break the internal connections. This is the nice thing about the patch bay modules. You can see there is these modules here that when nothing is connected, they will send the original signal. But when something is connected or sent into them, they will break the connection or the internal routing, and then you can you can overrun internal connections without making any weird outside connections with the patch bay module. So again, on the left we have inputs, on the right we have outputs. We can use the modulation VCO, the sequencers, and you can see there are already things going on here, already signals coming out because these are the outputs. So let's start slowly, right? Let's start the sequencers. Here we have run and stop. Let's see, let's bring in VCO1. Right, already we have something going. Let's have, right, the envelope, the VCA envelope is envelope 2, right? So we can control the decay. We can change the scale. Now here is the scale, and you can see it says chromatic, and it will show you also which scale this is. So you can see we have C, D, and so on, or C minor on the minor scale. So let's go with C minor, of course. Now we have this on the parallel. Let me show you how this works. Right, we have here the 3 buttons that will change the intermix. So now we have parallel, now we have folder. You can see folder through filter or filter through folder. Let's go with folder through filter just for fun. I have no effects or anything. I hope it's okay. No reverb. Oh man, this is not perfect for sure. But let's just listen to this for a second. Right, we have here low pass, band pass. Let's go with the low pass. We can fold things. Let's take this a bit down. Right, we can add some noise. Change the tone to be brighter maybe. Right, we can lock the sequence, right, and this will work like on the original synthesizer. So all the way down, it will lock the sequence. Right, and here we have just sequence 1 here. This is the length, sorry. Let's go with 5 and change the corrupt all the way left. Change the range. Right, all of this will work. Then we can have some randomness with sequence 2. Right, maybe open it all the way so it's just random. Right, and again, this will go to the filter. Yes, this should go to the filter. Why is this not working? Let me see here. Yeah, because of the blend. You see, the blend is just from the folder. We have to go to the filter. Aha! Yeah, you need to read the manual to use this. It's the same manual, by the way. You can use the same manual. Right, so now this is going to the filter, and now I can add, for example, the first envelope. Right? Something like this. I can add also sequence 2. Right, maybe open the corrupt a bit. Just to have a bit more variation. Again, we can save and load, we can change the scales. I can add also the second oscillator. By the way, here is the sequencer 1 amount, so all the way to the right it will be quantized. Here this will get no pitch information. Right, I can add ring modulation. Oh. Here we go. Right, so again, this is how you can use this with the interface and everything. We can change here. So band pass, or just a bit of band pass. Maybe in post I will add some reverb to this at least, just so it sounds a bit nicer. Right, I can add also here envelope 1. FM. Right, again through 0 linear FM. Right, listen to this. Right, so that's it, that's the interface. Again, we have patch bay. Don't forget to change the blend. Don't forget to open the volumes on the mixer, to open the filter if you need. Right, you saw before I didn't change the blend and things didn't go to the filter as I wanted. Right, we can change this a bit, maybe have this 50-50. And that's it, that's the synthesizer, that's the interface. Thank you again so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Cheers.